My daughter's groom called me an unemployed loser at the wedding. The very next day, he was unemployed. My name is Thomas. I started working at 12, sweeping sawdust and straightening canned peaches at Mr. Bartley's corner store. He would let the men from the mill chalk it if they were short. He would write a little mark by their names and trust that payday would clear the slate. I learned the weight of a ledger watching him do that. Numbers were not just ink. They were agreements, ribs in the body of trust. When he let me count the till on Friday nights, he would stand behind me and say, "Two kinds of men, kid. The ones who skim when nobody is looking, and the ones who look harder when nobody is watching." I decided I would be the second kind. It sounded simple then. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. After the corner store came the hammer, the forklift, the night shift at the freight yard. If you have never worked through a snowstorm with your breath turning to frost inside your scarf, then you do not know the stubborn music of a dock at 3 a.m. The chain clank, the diesel cough, the way your hands memorize the shape of a pallet in the dark. I learned men by their silhouettes and their silences. I carried coffee in a thermos and a crescent wrench in my back pocket. I watched foremen burn out because they thought titles were the same thing as respect. I watched old-timers earn a quiet kind of authority because they showed up early and left late and did not make a meal of it. I built my company the way you build a barn. One board at a time, shoulder to the wind, no shortcuts. The first board was a used flatbed truck I could barely afford. The second was a contract nobody else wanted, a run of awkward loads to a paper plant at the end of a bad road. I blew a head gasket on that road and slept in the cab with a wool blanket and a stubborn prayer. By the time I could hire a second driver, I had learned how to file permits in 3 counties and fix a liftgate by listening to it. There is book knowledge, and there is listening to metal knowledge. You need both if you want to build anything that does not rattle apart. When money finally stopped being a worry, I kept my mouth shut. Wealth, if you are not careful, is an amplifier for your worst notes. Lila, my former wife now gone, was the only one who knew what we had. She would sit with me at the kitchen table, tapping the ledger the way Mr. Bartley used to tap the till, and say, "Let the riches be quiet and the family be loud." Lila could quiet a room without raising her voice. She liked to remind me that our first apartment had a leaky sink and one good chair, and somehow that was still the year she laughed the most. "Remember what joy sounded like when it cost nothing," she would say, and I tried to. Lila and I were built from the same wood and cut on different angles. I was all edges and stubborn. She had edges too, but she knew how to sand them smooth. We lasted a long time that way, then we did not. Work has a way of mistaking sacrifice for love, and I let it. We divorced when Anna was in high school. It was not a spectacular explosion. It was 2 people running on different schedules until one of us, Lila, of course, had the courage to set the clock down. We did not fight over money. We fought over time, and time had already picked a side. We stayed a family anyway. Supper on Tuesdays at Lila's apartment, weekends with me out at the yard if Anna wanted to earn gas money. On her 18th birthday, Anna took her mother's last name. She said it felt more like home. I did not argue. Names are labels on jars. The jam inside is what matters. I signed the papers quietly and kept showing up with jumper cables and a trunk full of blankets every winter, just in case. Anna grew up with hand-me-down values and new shoes. By that I mean she learned to save the bow from a gift and still got the good sneakers for track. She knew how to tape a book's spine and how to look a cashier in the eye and say thank you with her whole face. She did not grow up rich. She grew up steady. She knew her mother's laugh was sacred, and her father's stubbornness was both a blessing and a chore. When people assumed the old man in the grease-stained jacket was still clocking shifts without a paycheck, well, that was fine by me. There is a kind of freedom in being misjudged. It lets you see people's first drafts. That is why, even after the company outgrew my first warehouse and then the second, I kept my habits. I walked floors before dawn. I bought coffee for the forklift crew. I checked dock doors myself because a broken spring at 5:30 a.m. can cost you a day and a good name. My managers knew who I was. The guards called me Mr. Green. But in the half-light of morning, to most folks, I was just the man with the flashlight and the thermos. If I shook your hand, it was because I wanted to feel the truth of your grip, not to make you look at my ring or my watch. If I asked your name, it was because I planned to use it the next time I saw you. Being underestimated is a tool when used right. People show you their true character when they do not think you can hire or fire them. Our books were healthy. We had started a scholarship fund under Lila's maiden name, a secret gift we never advertised. I kept living in the same square house with the same cracked driveway and the maple tree that drops 1,000,000 helicopters each spring. I drove the old truck because I trusted it. Money was just the shovel I used to take care of the roots. The man Anna decided to marry, Trevor, stepped into that world last winter wearing polished shoes and a smile that showed every tooth. He had been hired a few months before he ever met Anna. The connection came later. He was a junior hire in compliance. All talk about process and visibility. He landed his jokes like darts and liked to lean back in his chair with his hands behind his head after he made a point. He never met me as the boss. He met me as the early morning guy who left a box of donuts in the break room and asked the overnight crew if their boots were holding up. He assumed I was a retired relative who still liked to walk the floor. Around here we do not hang portraits. My name is on the filings, not the hallways. Anna uses her mother's surname, so he never tied the man with the flashlight to the owner whose last name he thought belonged to history. He shook my hand the way some young men do, squeezing too hard to prove something to the wrong audience. He did not know why break after break seemed to tilt his way. He did not see the hand on the scale. When he and Anna began dating, HR logged the relationship and moved his formal reviews away from anyone who reported to me. Still, I told myself to offer mentorship at a distance. Longer rope, cleaner chances. That was my mistake. I was the reason a written warning turned into a coaching note. I was the reason a mentor with a good spine and a clean compass happened to have an opening. I told myself I saw potential. Lila used to say, "Catch them doing something right, then give them a longer rope." I tried to follow her. I wanted to believe that cockiness is just confidence with sand still in it, and a little time will wash it clean. But arrogance is a tricky mask. It can look like potential from a distance. By spring, I was a grandfather twice over. Little Ruby was 6 and sticky with hope, the kind of child who always had a smudge of jelly on her cheek and a plan in her pocket. She wore paper crowns to breakfast and declared the living room a kingdom where kindness was the law. If you dropped a screw, she would be on the floor before you, hunting it by ear, saying, "Listen, Grandpa, it sings when it rolls." Her brother, Max, was 2, and fascinated by the way my old truck's radio squeaked when you nudged the dial just so. He would twist it and look at me like we had unlocked a tiny bird trapped in the dashboard. Those 2 were not just my joy. They were my second chance to get the important things right in a world that keeps moving the goalposts. I cared less about wedding colors and more about whether those children had a steady home where love was louder than money. I wanted Ruby to grow up knowing she could fix what she owned and keep what she promised. I wanted Max to learn that a squeak in a radio is not a defect, it is a story, and that things with stories are worth keeping. I wanted them to know that work is not shame and that wealth is not worth much if it turns you mean. So when Trevor's jokes about dead industries and fossil workers started drifting into family dinners, I swallowed hard and smiled. I told myself that 6 months from now the shine would wear off and the substance would show. I tried to hear Lila's voice in my head, that gentle warning rhythm she had. Breathe, then speak. She used to pinch my knee under the table when I got riled. She was not there to do it anymore, and the empty space beside me made the room feel drafty. Trevor liked to perform a certain kind of charm. He would pour the wine, spin some story about disruption, and toss out a jibe that sounded like a compliment if you squinted. "Blue-collar royalty," he called me once, raising his glass with a grin that did not touch his eyes. "The last of a noble line, may he enjoy his porch." He would laugh, and then scan the faces around him to make sure the laugh had taken root. When the room was kind, he leaned in. When it cooled, he said he was only teasing. And was everyone so sensitive now? The first time I saw the seam between his manners and his character, it was not at a dinner table. It was on a rainy Saturday when Anna asked me to watch the kids while she and Trevor ran errands. Ruby built a city of blocks on the carpet, careful little hallways and a tall center tower. She said it was a hospital, and the tallest part was for the babies, so they could see the sky. When Trevor came back, he stepped over it once, then twice, and on the third pass he nudged it with his shoe. The tower toppled, blocks skittering. Ruby froze, cheeks bright. He laughed. "Nothing wrong with learning early that buildings fall," he said, as if he had made a point about resilience and not about himself. He did not bend down to help her rebuild. I did. His eyes on me were not embarrassed. They were measuring. Another time, Max was at the kitchen table with my old pocket screwdriver, twisting the radio knob I had saved from a junkyard find. It squeaked that small, happy sound and his whole face lit up. Trevor reached past him and turned the knob hard, a little show of force. The squeak became a grind. Max flinched. "There," Trevor said. "Fixed." He was smiling, but there was nothing friendly in it. I took the radio back, and I said nothing, because saying nothing is sometimes how you gather the whole picture. Trevor had a way of being generous in public and stingy in private. He tipped loudly and badly. He called the barista champ and the janitor boss, then wiped his mouth at the table and whispered that some people should try harder. He had the oddest laugh when kindness cost him anything. It came out clipped, like a hinge that needed oil. He liked to talk about optimizing. He used that word about schedules, about budgets, about feelings. He would tell Anna that her time with her friends needed to be optimized around his needs. He would say Ruby's after-school art class was not efficient, that she would learn more in a language program that looked better in a future application. He used the language of improvement as a lever to pry apart what did not need fixing. At my house, he made jokes about my tools. "Vintage," he would say, rolling a socket in his palm like he was checking a coin for defects. At Anna's place, he moved her mother's painting from the wall to a hallway for a cleaner look. He did not ask. He arranged, and if anyone objected, he smiled as if the objection proved their smallness. When Anna asked him to put the painting back, he told her she was being emotional and that aesthetics should be left to people with taste. The painting stayed in the hallway. It was not about taste. He carried that same casual meanness into my company, though he did not know he was carrying it into my house too. He liked to refer to the night shift as legacy staffing, as if the men and women who kept the lights on when the city slept were an outdated line item. He proposed a policy once that would have cut the coffee budget for the loading crew while adding a team lunch line for compliance. He framed it as morale. He smiled when he said it. He always smiled when it would have hurt someone he did not have to look in the eye. Ruby never bought his charm. Children can smell the difference between a joke and a pinch. She would sit beside me on the steps and press her small shoulder to mine whenever he walked by, a little silent claim. Max, too young to sort it, would reach for Trevor with both hands and then pull back like he had touched a cold window. I saw those small hesitations and felt something old and fierce wake up in me, the part of a man that is not about money or titles but about shelter and promise. There was one evening that burned the lesson in. We were at Anna's after a long day, rain against the windows, a good soup on the stove. Ruby had made place cards with our names in crayon, careful and crooked. She spelled my name right and gave me a drawing of my truck in the corner. She spelled Trevor's name wrong, added an extra letter in the middle. He held it up and laughed. "Close enough," he said. And then he flicked it into the trash with 2 fingers. We do not need to encourage mediocrity. The sound that made in the garbage can was small, but I felt it like a nail in a board. Ruby's mouth made a brave line. She did not cry. She just looked at me to see what I would do. I picked the card out, smoothed it, and set it back on his empty plate. "We encourage effort in this house," I said quietly. He held my gaze for a beat too long, the smile slipping. Then he lifted his hands and said he had only been teasing. Could everyone relax? It was not one moment with Trevor. It was 1,000 little choices that always leaned toward himself. It was how he liked mirrors more than windows. It was how he knew exactly when to be kind if kindness had witnesses. Deep down, he was not confused or young. He was practiced. Cruelty for him was not an accident. It was a habit he had taught himself to excuse. I kept my counsel because I wanted to see the full pattern. I kept my tone mild because I wanted Anna to reach her own conclusions without thinking I had stacked the deck. But I started counting those small cuts, one by one, and I started thinking in terms of legacy with sharper edges. A family is a house you build every day, and I could feel him testing the studs, tapping for weaknesses, seeing which walls would give. I had grandchildren under that roof. That made the house sacred. The day of the wedding, the sun was bright and the band was loud. My suit felt like a costume I had not earned. Starched collar, polished shoes, everything too tight in the wrong places. The ceremony was beautiful. White chairs, promises, tears. I stood at the back with Ruby on my hip while Anna walked down the aisle on her uncle's arm. And for a moment it felt like I was carrying Lila forward too, the way a pocket keeps the warmth of a hand long after the hand is gone. I told myself to stay out of the spotlight. It was Anna's day, not a day to settle accounts, not a day to measure a man and find him wanting. The vows were simple and tender. I wanted to believe that tenderness could be a roof strong enough to hold. I watched Trevor's face as he spoke his lines, steady voice, steady gaze, and wondered which version of him those words belonged to, the public gentleman or the private critic. The rings went on. The kiss was clean and full of hope. For a brief stretch of sky, I let myself be happy. The reception, though, was where Trevor performed. He had too much champagne and just enough audience. Laughter clung to him the way confetti does to new shoes. He stepped to the microphone with a grin that said he had rehearsed his reflection more than his words. I felt Ruby's breath feather against my neck. Max clapped at the first cymbal crash from the band and then settled, thumb in his mouth, head on Anna's shoulder. Trevor cleared his throat and raised a glass. "To my father-in-law," he said, and the pause after the words told me this would not be a kindness. He was grinning like a man who thought the world was already his. Who taught me a valuable lesson? You do not need a job to have purpose. Laughter, thin at first, then fuller as people took their cues. The laughter made a ring I could hear but not enter. Seriously, what is retirement if you never worked in the first place? More laughter from the side of the room that knew his type too well. He leaned closer to the microphone. Unemployed loser. The word landed on the linen like a coin tossed too hard. He thought he was needling a man with old stories, not the one who could shut off his login. Anna winced. My granddaughter's fingers stiffened on my shoulder until her nails bit through my jacket. I kissed the top of her head and kept my eyes on my daughter. She forced a smile that looked like a crack in a plate you still use because it belonged to your mother. For the first time all day, I felt ashamed of my quiet. Not of who I was, but of the space my silence had made for this. A thought flashed through me, quick and mean. I could end this right here. I could speak one true sentence and flip his world the way he flicked Ruby's place card into the trash. I could say, "Son, you work for me," and watch the color drain from his face. I could take the room back with the simplest fact about where the checks come from and who signs them. The impulse bloomed hot, then cooled. It would scorch the day that belonged to my daughter. It would burn the memory I wanted my grandchildren to keep, their mother laughing, their family cheering, the band too loud on purpose. Another thought followed close behind. Maybe he is nervous. Maybe he is stumbling where he means to dance. Maybe if I give him grace, he will learn the shape of it and wear it next time. I have told myself that maybe 1,000 times about men who should have heard the lesson the first way it was taught. Lila would have pinched my knee under the table and made the choice clear. She was not there. I had to be the one to choose. Trevor kept smiling, scanning faces to see if his joke had earned him. A cousin of his laughed the loudest, the kind of laugh you use when you want to be on the safe side of a man's favor. A few of Anna's friends looked down into their napkins. My brother shifted in his chair, jaw tight, waiting for a sign from me. I thought about legacy, the word that feels big until you have to use it around a kitchen table. Legacy is not a portrait in a hallway. It is the way Ruby will remember the shape of my hand when I take hers. It is the way Max will hear his last name said in rooms where his mother is brave. If I let this slide, what am I teaching? If I swing, what do I break? There is a kind of dignity in being misjudged. It lets you see the inside of a man. But there is also a line where dignity turns into permission, and I could feel the line under my feet. I lifted my water. My hand was steady because my father taught me to steady a hand by focusing on the glass and not the noise around it. "To family," I said when the laughter died. I did not raise my voice. I let the room come closer to hear me. To the treasure that outlasts every bank account. It was not clever. It did not need to be. It was the only thing I could say without stealing the day from my daughter. A few people clapped. Some nodded in that way people do when they want to agree with the safer sentence. Trevor smirked and made a small bow to the room, as if he had set me up for a line I owed him. I sat down and put my palm flat on the table to feel something solid that did not move. Ruby leaned into me, a little anchor with a crayon crown. Across the dance floor, Anna's smile found its way back, but it had to travel farther than it should have. I let the band drown the rest of the night. That was my decision, and it was not easy. I danced with my granddaughter. I held my grandson until he slept heavy on my shoulder. I walked outside twice to breathe the cool air and remind myself that storms pass and roofs hold if you built them right. I told myself restraint is not weakness. It is the strength to leave a thing untouched until you can fix it without breaking the beams. But as the lights dimmed and the last song spilled over the floor, I felt the shape of tomorrow harden. I had tried grace. I had measured my silence. I had watched a man laugh at the house he wanted to live in. I knew what I would have to do, and I knew why. Not to win a point, not to make a spectacle, but to protect the children who will someday learn the story of this day and look to me to explain what we did when a line was crossed. I slept poorly, the way men do when their anger has nowhere to park. I watched the ceiling make slow white squares out of the moonlight and argued with myself in a whisper only I could hear. Say nothing. Say everything. Let it pass. Do not let it pass, and teach the children that cruelty is just another party trick. Around 3, I dozed and dreamed I was back on the dock trying to stop a rolling pallet with my hands. I woke with my heart in my throat and the taste of diesel in my mouth. Before dawn, I drove to the office, the head building with the clean glass and the flag that always flew straight. If a place can be a spine, that building has been mine. The night guard nodded. He called me Mr. Green, the name Lila used when she was teasing me about my stubbornness, when she wanted me to admit I was going to do the hard thing anyway. I rode the elevator alone, listening to its cable hum and counting floors like prayer beads. 11. I unlocked a room most people think is decorative until they step inside and see the wall of photographs. The first truck with a dented fender and my grin too big for my face. The first contract, signed with a pen I cleaned on my shirt. The first warehouse where the heat worked only when you argued with it. I stood under those frames and let the weight of them settle. You build a life with 1,000 tiny choices. You can lose it with one cowardly shrug. I poured coffee and opened a folder I had been keeping for 3 months. The paper smell rose up like a warning I had ignored long enough. It is a useful thing, being underestimated. Men tell you who they are when they do not think your opinion can cost them anything. Trevor had told on himself in receipts and timestamps and the lazy arrogance of someone who believes policies are for other people. 3 bachelor party charges at a resort tied to client entertainment. A custom watch charged after hours to the safety budget. 2 falsified mileage logs, sloppy copies where the ink changed color mid-trip. A procurement email to his friend, promising an inside track on a contract if he sweetened the deal. The audit team had followed the numbers like bloodhounds. I never said a name. They arrived at Trevor's desk on their own. Twice I set the file aside. I told myself people grow. I told myself a new husband under pressure might be showing off, not stealing. Once, I slid the thick envelope into a locked drawer and tossed the key into the small bowl on my desk with my paper clips and loose screws. The bowl where I keep things I plan to sort when I have a kinder heart. Last night he flicked that bowl upside down. I set the folder dead center on the desk and started making a plan, not a scene. Lila's rule: leave them a plan, not a scar. First, control the damage. I wrote it down in block letters. Damage is the mold that grows in the damp corners if you do not cut out the wet drywall fast. Freeze the company card. Suspend his procurement authority. Have it cue the badge deactivation and email lockout to go live at 8:45, not a minute earlier. No public walk of shame through a locked turnstile, but no window to do harm either. Pull the last 60 days of access logs. Ask security to preserve camera footage of his last 2 late-night entries, just in case the mileage logs were not the only lies. Second, chain of custody and fairness. I am old-fashioned about that. If you are going to take a man's job, you bring witnesses and you bring your paperwork clean. I texted Linda, my operations chief, the kind of message that does not panic a person but makes them lace their boots. Boardroom 11, 8 a.m. Need you and HR documentation ready. I emailed HR separately with the file numbers, attachments, and a simple instruction. Print 2 copies, tabbed, bring a termination for cause draft, and a repayment schedule per policy. Ensure the consent to record form is in the stack. This would not be a circus. It would be a table, 3 chairs, a closed door, and the facts. Third, protect the house. I wrote a note to legal to review the procurement email and draft a vendor notice rescinding any promise of preferential treatment. Copy compliance on the notice and reference the specific clause. Flag the vendor for a formal RFP if the business case still exists. Do not punish a company for the sins of one man if they were not a party to them. We do not create more harm than we fix. I drafted a short internal memo to managers, not a gossip rag, a values reminder. We honor our code because it protects our people and our name. When we fall short, we correct quickly and quietly. No names. Everyone would know, but I did not need to teach them to enjoy it. Fourth, set the lesson for the culture, not for my pride. In my notebook I wrote, no grand reveal. I would not use the magic trick, son, you work for me, to win a moment the way he had tried to win a room. He would learn who I was by the way the process felt. Fair, thorough, undeniable. Dignity cuts sharper than spectacle. The hardest list was the one I did not write down. It lived behind my ribs. I argued with myself. Give him one more chance? Offer a resignation instead of a firing? Would mercy teach him what consequence could not? Or would it teach my grandchildren that you can laugh at someone in their own house and still keep the keys? I pictured Ruby's place card crumpling into the trash. I pictured Anna's jaw tightening around a smile she did not deserve to have to hold in place. I heard Lila's voice say gently, "Are you protecting him, or are you protecting them?" When she asked a question like that, the answer was already in the room. I walked the perimeter of the office while the city woke, checking what I always check when I am about to do something that will echo: the locks on the cabinets with the old ledgers, the framed photo of Lila with grease on her cheek, laughing in the first warehouse, the flag outside, still taut in a wind I could not feel. I made one more call, to the head of audit, to confirm timestamps and hashes on the documents. "I need you in at 8:15, I said. "If he disputes a signature, I want you ready." She said, "Understood," in the voice of someone who knows that fairness is a kind of mercy, too. I sat back down and slid the folder closer. I added one last tab, a printout of the scholarship fund's mission statement under Lila's maiden name. It was not evidence. It was reminder. Why we do this, who we answer to when the room is empty. By the time the first light hit the glass, my list was done. The coffee was cold. My anger had found a place to park, in a plan with edges smooth enough not to cut the wrong people. I closed the folder and laid my palm on it the way a man settles a board before he drives the nail. Last night, he flicked that bowl upside down. This morning, I would set the pieces in order, one by one, and choose the kind of legacy my grandchildren could stand on without wobbling. I did not pace once the plan was set. I do not believe in wearing out the floor when what you need to wear in is your resolve. I moved through the checklist the way I used to load a truck. Weight balanced, straps tight, nothing left to shift. First, IT. Freeze his card. Flag any charge attempts. Schedule his badge and email lockout for after the meeting. Pull 60 days of door logs and put a legal hold on his mailbox. They confirmed and came back fast with more: an auto-forward rule sending company emails to his personal account, 2 late-night exports of the vendor list, and a USB drive mounted on his laptop after hours. Next, security. Be close on 11. Escort if needed. Keep it quiet. They agreed and sent me clips: Trevor tailgating into the restricted archive after his badge flashed red, and a shot of him leaving with a sealed box marked IT peripherals tucked under his arm on a weekend. Then, legal. You will get a procurement email. Draft a notice to the vendor canceling any hint of favoritism. Factual. Copy compliance. We send after counsel replied with something uglier, a reply from Trevor's friend. Understood on the sweetener. Your cut stays separate. Plus an unsigned side letter Trevor had drafted on his work account. I printed 2 copies of our code of conduct and marked the rules he broke: misuse of funds, falsified records, conflict of interest. Tabs down the margin so the pages could do the talking when words got slippery. I walked the hall. The building woke around me, carts rolling, floors shining, people who keep their promises without applause. That steadiness is what I was protecting. Linda came in, set down 2 bagels, and took the file. She read, squared the stack. "Clear and ugly," she said. "Both," I said. HR followed with a tabbed binder and 2 extra forms: consent to record and counseling support. "Even for cause," she said. "People still have lives." She had more. 2 hotline tips about him pressuring juniors to code client care on his personal meals, and an email where he suggested delaying an overtime approval until a friendlier staffer returned from vacation. Audit arrived with her laptop. "Everything is time-stamped," she said. "If he challenges, we show metadata." She had new flags: duplicate reimbursements on back-to-back weeks with identical receipt numbers, a mileage claim that overlapped a company-paid rideshare, and a spreadsheet where he hid an overage by changing column headers, tracked inversion history. I wrote a short script to keep us straight. Greet. State why we are here. Show documents, one at a time. Let him respond. Name policies and outcomes. Termination for cause if the facts stand. No severance. Repayment plan enclosed. Escort out quietly. Reference checks limited to dates and title. No personal matters. At the bottom I added Lila's rule. Leave them a plan, not a scar. I queued a simple values memo for managers to send later. We follow our code to protect our people and our name. When we fall short, we fix it quickly and quietly. No names, just the standard. At the desk, I asked the receptionist to keep the area calm. If anyone asks, we are in a policy review. True enough, water only. No extras. I called Anna. You all right? Getting there, she said over the clatter of pancakes and kids. Good. Love you. That was all. I would not mix wires. We set roles. Linda would steady the room. HR would run the paperwork. Audit would speak only to evidence. No raised voices. If he asked to resign later or to delay, the answer was no. If he dragged in the wedding, we would say, "We are here to discuss your conduct at work." If he melted down, security would step in, quietly. One last step. After, a quick huddle to reassign his work and open an anonymous channel for any pressure he had put on the team. Not a witch hunt, a clean sweep. I read the scholarship mission under Lila's maiden name. We fund hands-on learners. Good work builds good lives. I slid it under the code, a reminder of why. The receptionist called. He is here? Coffee and a smile. Of course he was. We set the room. Water poured. Binder centered. Linda to my right, HR to my left, audit down the table. I took the head seat because today the title mattered. I pressed my palms to the wood and thought of Ruby coloring careful, Max laughing at the little squeak, and Lila's voice. Be fair. Be firm. Protect the house. Ready, I said. A knock at the door. The handle turned. He walked in with coffee and a smile, the kind you put on like a bright tie. Then he saw the room. Linda steady on my right, HR on my left. Audit with a closed laptop, and the smile faltered. Morning, I said. Have a seat. He dropped into the chair and leaned back like it was his own office. What's this? Policy huddle? I've got a 9:30. We will be done before then, I said. We are here to review concerns related to the code of conduct. A small blink. He let out a breath through his nose. Okay. If this is about the client lunch last month, the receipt got miss. I slid the first tab forward. Company card statements. The resort charges labeled client entertainment. The custom watch posted to the safety budget. The duplicate reimbursements with identical receipt numbers on back-to-back weeks. Are these your charges? I asked. He glanced, quick and dismissive. I was going to reconcile. It's busy. Wedding season. Things slipped. Look at the timestamps, Audit said, opening her laptop just enough. After hours. Multiple entries from your credentials. He shrugged. I sometimes work late. You know how it is. I slid the next tab. Mileage logs where the claimed drive overlapped a company-paid rideshare. His initials in the corner, crisp as a stamp. That's clerical, he said. Admin helps with that. They probably... Admin did not submit your initials, Linda said. Her voice is firm the way a doorframe is firm. You did. I did not look away. We will go one page at a time. He tried on a grin. Can we be efficient? I've got actual work. We are, I said, and placed the procurement thread on the table. His email to a friend promising an inside track if he sweetened the deal. Beneath it, legal's recovered reply. Understood on the sweetener. Your cut stays separate. Beside that, the draft side letter he wrote on his work account. Unsigned but traced to his edits in version history. Color rose in his cheek. That's out of context. In my industry, relationship management is... This is our industry, I said. We do not sell favors. Audit slid in a thin stack. Email auto-forward from your work account to your personal address, turned on 2 months ago. 2 late-night exports of the full vendor list. A USB mounted after hours. Logs preserved. Camera still of you tailgating into the archive after your badge failed. And this, She placed a photo still. Is you leaving with a sealed box from the IT closet on Saturday? He stared at the frozen image. I was borrowing a spare keyboard. The box was labeled peripherals, Linda said. You did not sign it out. HR set 2 hotline abstracts on the table. Anonymous reports from your team. You instructed juniors to code your personal meals as client care. You suggested delaying an hourly worker's overtime approval until a friendlier approver returned from vacation. His laugh came out tight, like a hinge that needs oil. People are dramatic. You give them feedback, they go crying to the hotline. And the vendor exports? I took work home. I care about process. I'm trying to modernize. By emailing our vendor list to your personal account? I asked. By altering spreadsheet headers to hide an overage? Audit tapped a printout. Tracked in version history. Your edits. The grin slid off his face. You are making a meal out of nothing. No, I said. We are making a record out of choices. He shifted tactics. All right. Maybe a few mistakes. Wedding stress, long hours. If we're talking discipline, I can take a write-up. I've been delivering. Ask compliance. Linda looked at him the way I have seen her look at a misloaded pallet. Delivery does not excuse damage. He pushed his coffee away and leaned forward, voice softening. Look, you seem like a reasonable man. We can fix this. I'll pay back whatever you want. Just keep it off my file. I have a family now. I thought of Ruby's brave mouth when he flicked her place card into the trash. I thought of Max's flinch when the squeak became a grind. I thought of Mr. Bartley tapping the till and Lila tapping the ledger. Numbers are ribs in the body of trust. If you break them, the whole thing has trouble breathing. Do you dispute any document on this table? I asked. This is the moment to say so. He glanced at the pages and chose audacity. I dispute the intent. Everyone knows you have to bend a few things to move a company forward. Maybe some people here are stuck in dead industry habits. I'm not that word, the one he loved. Dead. As if the men and women who came in before sunrise to keep doors from jamming were already gone and just did not know it yet. This company breathes because people keep their word when no one is watching, I said. The code is not a slogan. It protects the people who do the work and the name that feeds their families. When you treat rules as suggestions, you ask the honest to carry you. He smirked again, reaching for the old script. My father-in-law will have something to say about this. He already did, I said. Silence sat down with us. HR folded her hands on the binder. Per policy, misuse of funds, falsification of records, and conflict of interest are each grounds for termination. Together, they require termination for cause. We have prepared a repayment plan for the personal expenses and a notice regarding company property and data. We will provide information for counseling support. He stared at her like she was a wall he had not expected. You cannot. We can, Linda said, and we will. Quietly. Properly. He turned to me, charm curdling into anger. This is personal. It is not, I said. It is moral. There are people here who sweep floors no one thanks them for and load trucks in weather that bites bone. They do not steal from the coffee budget, let alone the safety fund. They do not game junior staff or sell our integrity by the ounce. They trust that the house they are building will not be pulled down from the inside. He looked down at the table, then up at me with a last attempt. If you do this, I'll go public about how this place is run. You want that? We want the truth, I said. And the truth is in these pages. Audit turned the laptop so he could see the log entry times, the version history, the camera still. Data does not posture. It simply is. He swallowed. His shoulders dropped, then hitched back up into a shape that looked like defiance and sounded like defeat. Fine. What do you need me to sign? HR slid the termination packet forward. This acknowledges termination for cause, return of all company property, repayment as scheduled, and that reference checks will confirm only your dates and title. Please read. He skimmed with a speed that tells on a man. He signed. His hand shook once, small but honest. Security will escort you to gather personal items, I said, standing. They will not touch anything that is yours. This will be quiet. You will return your badge and any equipment. You will not access our systems again. If you have materials belonging to the company off-site, the notice inside outlines how to return them without incident. He stayed seated. You think you're a hero for this? You think you're protecting something pure? I thought of the scholarship mission under Lila's name. I thought of Ruby's paper crowns and Max's laugh and the men in the yard who show up early and leave late and do not make a meal of it. I think decency is a wall that needs tending, I said, and I am a man with a hammer. Security appeared in the doorway, plain clothes, polite. He stood up, gathered his coffee, then set it down without drinking. At the threshold he paused. You could have done me a favor, he said, like the request itself was proof I owed him one. I did, I said. I chose the truth and gave you a clean process instead of a public mess. That is the favor we give everyone here. They walked him out. No parade, no eyes, just the quiet hum of a building doing its work. When the door shut, I let the air leave my chest and found the shape of the moral where it had been waiting all morning. Good does not shout. It stands. It stands when a child's card is flicked into a trash can. It stands when a safety budget is treated like a tip jar. It stands when an easy laugh tries to make small what is sacred. Good is not a performance. It is a habit, like showing up early and leaving late and not making a meal of it. I looked at Linda and HR and Audit, the keepers of small, necessary promises, and nodded. Thank you, I said. We were not avengers. We were caretakers. Out the window, the flag ran straight. On the wall, the first truck stared back at me with its dented fender and my foolish grin. I placed my palm on the binder, gently, the way a man settles a board before he drives the nail. Let us fix the holes he made, I said. Then let us go back to building. He was escorted out quietly. No parade. I was gathering the team for the cleanup when my phone buzzed. Anna. I answered to noise, drawers slamming, a voice too loud for a small kitchen. She put me on speaker and set the phone down. You set me up, Trevor snarled. Your dinosaur dad and his little morality play. I carried that place. I carried you. Anna said nothing. I could hear Ruby whispering to Max, the way big sisters do. It is okay. We are okay. You think I married you for love? He went on, pacing like a storm. I married the last name. I married access. You were leverage. There it was. The slip. Not nerves, not a joke. The truth he could not keep caged once the applause was gone. He kept going. Give me your laptop. I know there's money in that family somewhere. Keys, passwords, now. I am not starting over because your broke old man got precious about his blue-collar code. Leave, Anna said, calm. The kids are here. He laughed, sharp and mean. What kids? I never asked for your baggage. I told you that. You begged me to be a father. You needed the image. I played along. I felt my hand close around the edge of the table. Not rage. Resolve. There is a difference. I spoke into the phone. Anna, take Ruby and Max to your room. Close the door. Turn on the fan. Trevor heard me. Stay out of this, he said. This is my home. It is not, I said. Not anymore. A thud. A chair tipped. He was looking for something to break that would scare without leaving a mark. Abusers love plausible deniability. I have seen the pattern in men he pretends he is not. He shifted to bargaining. Look, we can fix this. Say your dad misunderstood. Get me a meeting. If he rescinds the termination, I will return everything. I will even send flowers. Be smart for once. Anna's voice did not rise. I am being smart, she said. I am asking you to leave while the children are here." He walked out to the porch to call someone. We heard the screen door slap. His voice carried. "Yeah, it went bad. The sweetener email? They found it. Who snitches with a hotline anyway? Pathetic." A beat. "No, they cannot touch me. I will make noise. I will tell people what a mess that company is. I will say the old man runs it like a church." Another beat. "I said I would get us in. I did not say it would be clean." The mask was off, and even his friends heard it. He came back in and saw the bedroom door closed. He rattled the knob, then stopped. Cowards hate locked doors, and started scooping up envelopes from the gift table. He held them up to the light. "Where's the cash? You still have the envelopes from last night? We are even." That was enough. I hung up and called for a civil standby. Then I called a locksmith and my neighbor 2 doors down. "Stand in the yard," I said. "No words, just be there. Goodness can be a witness." By the time I reached the house, the cruiser was already there. Lights off, presents on. Trevor had moved to performative sorrow. Wet eyes, hands out. "I am stressed. They're overreacting." He would have found a way to turn tears into a tool if the room had still loved him. The officer asked him to step outside. He tried one more line, the one men like him keep for last. "If you do this, Anna, I will take everything. I will make calls. I will make sure no one hires your dad again. I will—" "You will leave," the officer said, calm and final. "You can retrieve personal items later with an escort." Trevor looked at me like the world had betrayed him by following its rules. "This is not over," he said. "It is," I said. "And it ended before today." We just wrote it down. He went down the steps too fast, almost slipped on his own coffee. Caught himself, glared. Then he was gone. No triumph, no charm, just a man without a room to play to. Inside, Anna opened the bedroom door. Ruby stood brave with her crown of paper and tape. Max held his stuffed truck, cheeks wet and chest steadying. I knelt to their height. "Sometimes," I said, "people show you who they are when they think they have already won. That is a gift. It lets us choose what to do next." Anna nodded. She was shaking a little, but it was the shake of a bridge settling after the wind, not of a thing about to fall. "I heard him," she said. "All of it. I am done." We changed the locks that afternoon. I called a lawyer who knows how to pack dignity into filings. We set a plan for custody, safety, and a clean accounting of what belonged to whom. We did not shout online. We did not trade barbs. We documented. We protected the children. We put the truth where it could stand without us. Later, when the house was quiet and the kids were asleep on the couch under an old camp blanket, Anna leaned against the doorway. "I wanted to believe he had a better self," she said. "I kept waiting for it to arrive." "Better selves require practice," I said. "He has practiced something else." She looked at the kids and then at me. "What do we practice?" "Kindness with a spine," I said, "and boundaries you do not apologize for." Outside, the night settled. The porch light made a small circle on the new lock. No victory parade, no dramatic music. Just a house, a family, and the sense that something wrong had been stopped where it stood. Good does not always look like winning. Sometimes it looks like a closed door in a quiet room where children can sleep without listening for footsteps. That is enough. That is everything. The days after were busy in the way healing is busy. Calls to make, locks to change, papers to sign. We filed what needed filing and answered questions without adding commentary. The court stamped a few truths that had been true all along. The house was Anna's, the children's routines were sacred, and threats do not become rights because someone says them loudly. At the company, we closed loops. The vendor got a clean letter and a fair shot through a new bid. Compliance rebalanced, audit finished its report, and the memo went out. We fixed holes quickly and quietly. There were no victory speeches. People made coffee, checked dock doors, and got back to work. That is the point. Goodness holding its ground so everyone else can live their lives. At home, the absence found its shape. One less jacket on the hook. One less voice at the table. Loss is still loss, even when it is the right subtraction. Ruby asked where he had gone. I told her this. Sometimes adults make choices that do not fit inside a family. She nodded like a small judge and went back to coloring. Max slept harder, the way children do when the house has stopped bracing for the next sound. When the air settled, I sat with Anna at the kitchen table and slid over the folder Lila and I prepared years ago. The trust with its simple rules. Education, health, home, no distributions to anyone who mocks what the house stands for. We read Lila's note together. Not everything that glitters is gold. The gold is in your people. Anna pressed 2 fingers to the signature and cried the kind of tears that wash dust off stone. We built new little habits. Ruby checked the locks with me each night and tapped the doorframe twice for luck. Max learned to say safe and then forgot to say it because it was simply true. On Sundays, we drove to the lake bungalow. I showed them how to tie a knot that holds without cutting, how to listen for a fish without making the water afraid. We let the quiet do some of the teaching. There were still hard hours. The mind returns to the empty chair and wonders if it could have been different. But every time that question rose, it ran into the same wall. Kindness has rules, and so does a home. You do not get to stay after you try to break them. A family is not a prize you claim. It is a place you honor. Months later, at the scholarship night under Lila's name, I handed an envelope to a dock worker's daughter who had grease under her nails from keeping her mother's car running. Ruby, wearing her paper crown, placed the certificate in the girl's hand like passing a candle. Good work builds good lives, I told them all, and felt the house inside those words. We were smaller, yes, but stronger where it mattered. The children ran ahead of us instead of looking back. Anna laughed like her mother again, not every day, but often enough that hope could find its way through the rooms without asking permission. One evening by the water, dragonflies stitched the air, and the dock creaked its old, familiar song. Anna stood beside me, watching the kids race the length of the boards and back. "Dad," she said softly, "I did not know you were rich." "I am not," I said, watching the kids chase dragonflies. "I am fortunate. The riches are them," and I believed it. I still do.
My grandpa's words really happened. I believe him. If you want more true tales stories like this, hit subscribe.